So welcome. This is training about giving and receiving feedback, and it is for neighborhood courts, but it's also something that can be applied in your life in other areas, professionally, personally, um, whatever. And just quickly, I know you all do a lot of trainings together and have worked together a lot, but this is sort of agreement, just like how we'd like to be together. First one is take care of yourself. And I mean, this is, already coming up with like, it is dinner time. And if you need to get a bite to eat or whatever, go to the bathroom, just go ahead and do it. Don't worry about it. And I see everybody's got their name up there, which is super helpful. I appreciate that. And if you wouldn't mind keeping your camera on as much as possible, that just makes for a more like we're in a group experience together than if people turn the camera off. Move up, move back just means like take turns talking. And, if you haven't said anything, please speak up. And if you've been talking a lot, maybe make room for other folks. Please mute yourself when you're not talking. I mean, that's not strictly necessary because it's a pretty small group, but if you're in a noisy environment, please mute yourself. And you don't have to participate in any particular way if you don't feel like it. And if you want to take some risks, please go ahead and speak from your own experience. So are there any questions about any of that? No? All right. Can I get a thumbs up if you agree? All right. I'm counting the thumbs I see as everybody. Okay, so our hopes from what you get from the training today is some ideas about giving and receiving feedback with a collaborative approach, and to see feedback as an opportunity for learning and growing, because it's really an important ingredient for personal and professional development, also strengthening relationships, building trust. I know you're all in a community together as panelists, and working on this together is a way that like you can help build that trust with each other as you're working on neighborhood courts. And so being receptive to feedback is really important. And what is it? One thing it is inevitable, because we're all always giving and receiving feedback. Like, for example, like I could be receiving feedback that's very direct. Like somebody might say to me, someone has said to me like, hey, Rachel, we can tell what you're thinking just by looking at your face. You're like telegraphing your feelings. And I was so shocked when I heard that, because I thought I was like, keeping it under wraps, but it turns out no. So that was useful feedback. Or maybe people give feedback by say, if a friend stops returning your phone calls or something, that's like a kind of indirect form of feedback, like something is going on. And so we're all constantly getting feedback, and it can be an opportunity to learn things about ourselves. And of course, there's also good feedback too. There's that like, hey, I really liked that question you asked, or, I really appreciate how you, stood up for what you believe in that conversation, those kinds of things. So feedback's not all negative. But the feedback that I'm more focusing on tonight is that feedback that's like the kind of growth feedback. And so the purpose of that is to help the person or the organization, in this case, neighborhood courts, continue to be successful, or to grow and become, more successful. So I mentioned down here at the bottom of the slide about a growth mindset and a culture of support, which is just, I think you're all in a kind of a ongoing relationship with each other. And I know some of you have been doing this for years. Like, it seems kind of cool to me because you can sort of grow together through all the different trainings that neighborhood court has about, asking different questions, or how's your tone, or I know Sharon Tom is going to do one about like, what are you communicating that you don't even realize? And you all get to like grow together and support each other in that, which is pretty awesome. So what I'd like to do to kind of, get you like a chance to like be interacting and stuff a little bit more is to break out into some breakout groups. Let's see. So what the question for this is, it's basically to talk about like what your experience of feedback has been. And it is share a time you received some really awesome feedback. What was about? What made that feedback feel really good to you? What need did it fulfill? How was the feedback given to you? So that's one part of it. And then the other part is what type of feedback is the hardest for you to give? So it's sort of like there's two sides to this. One is like you thinking on times that you have received feedback that was, a good experience for you. And the other is like thinking about you giving feedback and, what might have been challenging about that. All right. So I'm curious, how was that? What did you all come up with about some characteristics of getting useful feedback?
Well, as for me, I do not use too much emotional in it, and I just try to listen to the keywords, and
Mm,
so yeah.
so not too much emotion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Sometimes you just
Oh,
try
go
to
ahead.
feel like, oh, empathy for them. Of course, we're empathy for them, but we're not here to, so
Are you talking about like when you got the feedback or when you are giving it?
when you're given it.
Hmm. So keeping it kind of emotionally clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about other folks? What came up for you in this conversation?
Well, not getting personal, I would say, would be one. We didn't talk about that, but just as a key characteristic, I would say that if it's not personal, some kind of that would make me listen better.
Yes.
Mm,
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And also, oh, I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind. I'll think
Well,
about it.
Blake, can I ask you, what do you consider personal?
Um, I guess out something that it could be interpreted as something beyond the questions I'm asking or my role as a panelist. If their comments are outside those boundaries, I would consider that personal.
I wish you'd be a little bit more specific because I'm still guessing what you would consider.
Yeah, I wish I had an example for you. Ada, do you
Uh,
have one?
okay.
Aida, do you have one?
Well, yeah, actually, I guess I do. It could be personal if it was sort of targeted you as an individual for something you said, um, that was interpreted in a negative way that you didn't see interpreted as a negative way. That's about the best way I can put it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's hard, like, to say like it's not personal because I know like it feels personal when like somebody gives me some feedback that's, oriented towards letting me know
yeah.
about something I could do better.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, there used to be somebody that was always seemed to be on my case about a specific thing that I think they were totally misinterpreting, I mean, anytime I would make some comment about, like, I would say that their response was, there was somewhat of a cultural response, they would turn that into a negative,
hmm,
even though it wasn't meant to be negative, you know what I mean? So
that's
that's kind of how I took sort of a personal response.
Did anything come up for you? Sorry, I was going to ask if anything came up about, what made feedback good, like, from your all's experience of like getting feedback.
I mean, as for me, can I answer the questions?
Oh, yeah, please
Am I
do.
being talking too much? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So as for me, I love feedback. I don't, I mean, the more feedback, the better for me, because everybody look look at you differently, right? So you might do one thing and then, but the other person might see some different things, right?
Yeah.
Is it a good comments? Take it. If it's a bad comment, then hey, you look at yourself. Do I need to change that a little bit? Maybe that could be a good advice. So I see every comments, every feedback as an advice for me, and then I don't put any personal, or anything into it. And the more feedback is the better for me.
Optimal. Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, well, this
I
relates.
think good feedback is when someone has a suggestion for something that you've done that is difficult for you to understand, and then they sort of interpret it in a good way, and it's good feedback.
Yeah. All right, well, let's keep moving forward, and we'll have a lot more to talk about. I wanted to talk about growth mindset for a second. This is one of my favorite concepts. And growth mindset, it's sort of in contrast to this idea of a fixed mindset. And so a growth mindset is that we can learn, grow, and change. And a fixed mindset is more like the sort of idea that people are who they are and they don't change. And, a leopard doesn't change its spots. And, if you're whatever, if you're smart, you're smart. And if you're good, you're good. If you're bad, you're bad. And nothing's going to change that because that's just who you are. And whereas a growth mindset is a belief that we can grow and change. And if you have that growth mindset, then receiving feedback is a lot less threatening and more of an opportunity, like Valerie was talking about, because it's like, oh, I can take this and kind of evaluate it. And if it seems useful, I can learn and grow from it. Whereas if you have that sense of like, I just am who I am, and then somebody, says something negative about me, then it's like they're attacking something about me that is permanent, and that feels really bad. And so having that mindset of like, we're all learning and growing, which I think is like very aligned with the whole neighborhood courts idea of like, participants and kind of like asking those questions to get them to reflect on, what led them to that situation and what the impact was and all those kinds of things, really goes along with this growth mindset idea. All right, next slide. So just a couple assumptions that I put out there is that, people often aren't aware of the way that they're perceived, or all the ways that they're perceived, or their impact on other people. And it's pretty much impossible to learn about those aspects of ourselves that we're not aware of without getting some feedback from other people. Feedback's the key to, learning and growing. So there's two sets of skills. There's the giving the feedback and the getting the feedback. And we're going to talk about both of those tonight. And I just wanted to say that, as we're growing, like the first step is kind of the awareness. So maybe somebody says something like, maybe somebody says to me like, hey, that meeting we just had, like you talked like half the time and there was like some other people there who didn't talk at all, like maybe, create a little more space for other folks. And I might be like, what? I wasn't aware of that. But then I'm also like, oh, well, I am like a teacher and I'm used to like getting to stand up and talk for an hour without interruption. And so, I could get comfortable in that and kind of like, oh, that awareness, like that is like the awareness. But then from where we have the awareness, we have to have sort of the willingness to change and then practice and support. And so that's what this is about. And I think in neighborhood courts, like I mentioned before, you all have a cohort of each other that hopefully you can like support each other in growing whatever skills, whatever comes up in terms of feedback. Okay, so why is giving feedback so hard? I mean, I guess there's like different, when we give people those appreciation feedback, that's not too hard to do, like, great job and so on. But giving that more negative feedback can be really challenging. And there's different reasons for it. And I mean, I don't know, let me just throw it out there. What do you guys think is some reasons why giving feedback can be hard?
maybe
You don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Hmm. That is a huge one. Yes, not wanting to hurt people's feelings. Anything else?
We don't know how it'll be received. You know, what we say may not be what they hear. So
Yeah, that's really true. It's risky, it opens up like a possible, misunderstanding. Pat, yeah.
I think people project sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Their criticism is based upon their experience or their culture or their, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
And and so when you're giving the feedback,
mhm.
it can be challenging based upon what your your experience has been.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, like where we come from and all our life experiences like really shape our perceptions of how we see things. And, different people can look at the exact same thing and kind of see something different and potentially, both be right. Well, I have a little slide, the next one that is so, kind of answers some of this. I mean, hurt feelings came up. Sometimes, you might misunderstandings. It could be, some kind of potential retaliation, like, depending on what the situation is. And there's also that fear of losing or damaging a relationship, or maybe feeling vulnerable if like you're giving the feedback because it's something that you need, like that kind of exposes a vulnerability, and that can feel bad too. So there's a lot of reasons why giving feedback is hard. I have this little slide. This is a couple psychologists made this. It's sort of like designed to help people understand their relationship with others, and it's sort of different aspects of ourselves. So it's like that top left corner there where it says open self. I mean, that's kind of the part of ourselves that like is really out there, and like we know it and everybody knows it. And then under that hidden self, the blue square, that's information about ourselves that like we just know, and maybe share with some intimates, but it's more private. And then there's a green one. This is really interesting, the unseen self. And that's information about ourselves that we don't know, but other people might know. Like the example I gave in the beginning where somebody gave me feedback that like they could see how, I was feeling or what I was thinking based on my face. And I thought I was like a closed book, but no, I'm actually an open book. So, that was good. That was good to know. So it's other people, if they share that, then we can start to see those parts of our unseen self. And this unknown self, I don't even know what this is. Things you don't know and other people don't know. I guess that's our emerging self or something like that. This next one, this actually kind of goes to, what we were just talking about, what, Pat was saying is like that people can see the same thing and see it differently. And you look and you see these two cartoon characters here, and the one person is looking and pointing, it's like, look, there's 4, and the other one's like, no, you're wrong, there's 3. And then when looking at the drawing, it's like, oh, they're actually, that's how it's drawn. And it's just all based on how we're looking at things from, and how we're looking at it has to do with our history and all kinds of different facets. So that already came up in our conversation, but I like that little illustration. All right, so the kind of feedback that we're talking about, I just wanted to, kind of narrow the focus, although it can be for other things, is like, I'm thinking about like during the panel debrief, it's like you're doing the neighborhood court thing, and then at the end, there's a chance to like debrief what happened. And that's an opportunity to become better as panelists and to become better, provide a better experience for the participants in neighborhood courts. So that's really, what we're going to focus on. That said, 3 types of feedback from this really great book. Thanks for the feedback. If anybody wants to like think more about this, I recommend this book. Appreciation feedback. Hey, good job. Evaluation feedback, that's more like performance review or quizzes, something like that. And coaching feedback, that's more like what we're about, is like when you're giving that feedback that's designed to help somebody get better. And in this case, it's like mutual coaching. It's not like one person is the coach and everybody else is the team. We're all kind of coaching each other to like get better together. Okay, so the feedback's always being given, and just this idea that feedback is an expression of commitment to the relationship. Like we just talked about why it can be hard to give feedback. And so it's actually like when someone is extending themselves by giving feedback, if they're giving it, you know, in a chosen, you know, kind of conscious way, it's actually like they are extending themselves and taking that risk of all the things that we talked about, having a misunderstanding or losing the relationship, hurting someone's feelings, and doing it, you know, to help you, the receiver, get better. So something that my supervisor likes to say is feedback is a gift. And I find that to be funny, but it's actually true. Like it really can be a gift. And, you know, I'm with Valerie. I'm like, I like feedback, the more, the better, because that's what gives me a chance to grow. Okay, so we're going to do some more breakout rooms so y'all have a chance to talk a little more. And this question, okay, this is what are the ways you're currently giving feedback to each other? And I mean this in the context of like neighborhood courts. Like, are there structured opportunities? Yes, there's the debriefing. Are there missed opportunities? How might you unconsciously be giving feedback, whether it's positive or negative? What's working, what isn't? Is there something you'd like to do differently? So this is all about kind of talking about in the neighborhood court process, how is it working for, I'm going to say us, how's it working for us, and how could it possibly be improved? So I'm going to send back into breakout rooms. It'll
Actually,
be
can
different
we
break.
stay in the main room?
Oh, you want
Because,
to stay?
yes, because we have like almost as much staff as we do people. So it'd be nice if participants, I mean, if panelists could all talk to each other.
Okay, sure. Yeah, if you want to do it that way. So never mind the breakout. We'll just go right into the conversation, which is just what I said. And so I'll just, you know, open it up to whoever wants to talk.
Well, I'll start. This is Aida. Or obviously there are structured opportunities in the end when we do, well, there's two, there's when we do the directives and then when we do the debrief afterwards. I can't think of any missed opportunities that we would have for feedback. So that's all I can think of at the moment.
I think that we don't allow enough time at the end, and this is probably on me for the panelists to talk to each other. What do y'all think about that?
Liz, Liz, I like the way that we did giving the feedback to each other in the panelists after the session. So it's right there that we give each other we give each other feedback and also hear from you and hear from both case managers there. There's actually a plus. Right. So I think rather just wait a couple of days to give the feedback that we just give feedback to each other at the end of those, you know, at the end of the whole, you know, panel things before we leave this, you know, the place. So I think that's a good idea.
So you're happy with how it's going, or?
Yeah. Yeah. But what is Ida, I know you're muted. I know you're talking.
Sorry, I forgot. I think sometimes at the end of the sessions, if they go on really long, we just want to leave. So part of it might be that we don't have too many, you know, cases, then we'd have more time, you know, more receptive to doing feedback. But otherwise, I think it works fine.
I agree. I think at least on all the panels I've been on recently, Liz has been there, and she gives everyone an opportunity to each of us talk. And then Shay, or who's ever case managing, and then I've always felt like we have been able to talk to each other. Like Berlin, I really liked that question, and when you were going this way, and I felt like you let him be comfortable when he was vulnerable, or I kind of replay the session a little bit, and then give people the opportunity to express their frustration that they wish they could have done better in a certain way, or frustrated, or it's more of an emotional thing rather than I think about the session than about each other.
But do you all think that you're hesitant to give feedback to each other that is more of like the growth mindset rather than you did this well?
I think we do. I mean, I personally, we were talking in the first breakout room, a little hesitant because I feel like I don't want to come across as being critical, and or create a conflict with another panelist. And so Liz, I usually wait for you to say something if it's that obvious that something has made anyone else feel uncomfortable, that you usually pick up on it and say something.
I think sometimes it depends on who you're in the panel with. Some people you can feel comfortable giving feedback, positive and negative, and others are sort of fixed in their, or rigid in their way they do things, and you're less likely to want to give them feedback. That's just kind of my opinion, but
It depends if it's style or if it's content. Because as I was saying to Blake, it's not criticism, it's feedback. And that in one panel, one of the fellows said something that felt like it was a very general assumption. And the feedback I gave and also Linda gave in a different way, it was sort of like, hey, it wasn't like, what? Wake up, what? It was sort of like, well, I think that could be looked at differently, or I don't think that that might always be true. And then it was okay. And if it's up to him to process it or not process it, that's up to him. It's our feedback or my feedback. And what happens after that is no one is on trial. And in some of the panels, Linda and I will talk afterwards and say, well, I don't know if this was really working. And we give each other feedback about a case that seemed to just kind of be hanging, or that we thought it didn't work out as well as it might have because of how we were interacting or not interacting. So actually, it was after, it was after the time was out. So I think feedback was like, I was saying that often if I'm the grandma, one time I said this, I said, listen, honey, you're using honey. And the feedback was, you don't use honey. And you don't say, I said, okay, if I were with that person, if I was mentoring that person, maybe, but certainly not in a neighborhood court situation. Okay.
Do you all feel like you're getting enough feedback as panelists?
I think so. Liz is particularly good at it.
I agree.
Yeah, I would
yeah.
agree with that.
So Liz, I'm going to ask you a question. Is there sometimes more feedback that you would like to give, but that you monitor yourself because it might seem not positive, it might seem negative?
I don't think now. I think now I'm able to do it, give you all the feedback that I think is appropriate. I think at the beginning, yeah.
But this is a point that Nancy brought up too in our breakout is that we're all volunteers, and I think that changes the dynamic. If we all worked together in an office and we were being paid and we were, we had daily politics that we were dealing with, there would be, the dynamics would be different. But the fact that we only see each other, and sometimes never, and sometimes more often that we're with the same panelists, I think it makes it slightly more delicate for feedback to, as we don't know their personalities really as well as we might if we work together all the time. And I think it's just to be, okay, I know that person and that's just the way they like to do things, and this is another person. And so I kind of change my behavior according to the dynamics.
Could you give an example, Blake? Because I'm just thinking of the panels. I can say that I really have a lot of negative feedback to give people. It's kind of pretty rare. So what would be the situation that you kind of explained, but without an example?
You mean that I would have negative feedback with my fellow panelists?
Yeah, something, because I think it said that maybe this is the way the person does something, or maybe it's like, what might you, because something I don't have much to ever complain about.
I don't either. I didn't mean to infer that I did. I rarely have anything negative, but I think if I was working with these people, if other panelists every single day, I probably would have more feedback. That's all I'm saying, I think.
Mhm. Okay.
Guess we have maybe about a minute or so left here, and I'm just like, this is kind of an opportunity for like what's working, what isn't. I mean, I heard that like maybe sometimes it's so long that everybody just wants to get out of there. Is there anything else that you might like to do differently on this issue?
Not really.
Well, great. I mean, it sounds good. I mean, I heard really nice feedback for you, Liz. So brava.
Thanks for the feedback.
I'm also just hoping that Shay, the caseworkers feel comfortable to give us feedback too. They're always super positive. And I hope they feel really free to be able to give us real honest feedback, because I really appreciate it from them too.
Yeah. I think they all just left the call.
Oh,
Unfortunately.
I know,
okay.
I was just gonna say.
Maybe it was, it's kind of quitting time over at pre-trial, which is pretty late, but
Okay, well, Liz, you can take that on to them.
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for that. All right, moving on. Okay, debrief. We don't need to debrief because we were all together. All right, best practices for giving feedback. All right, this is kind of a collaborative feedback, and this is in general, be invitational. So it's like the giving, the time and the place and everything, with the receiver in mind. Like when you're debriefing, that's like already set up to sort of be like that. But, in other places in your life, at work, at home, whatever, it's nice to ask the person like, hey, can I give you some feedback? Or, I'd like to talk to you about something. When would be a good time? And so that it's not just like kind of coming at them in an unexpected, surprising way. And then I think something that was brought up before after you went into the first breakout room is like, trying to be like specific and, describing like particular things that someone has done rather than sort of like overall qualities, which is more like the personal attack. Like, you're always rude is not as helpful as, when you kind of stepped in front of me when I was on my way out the door, like that kind of bothered me, or you know what I'm saying? Like, doing something, giving the like details of something specific really helps. Describing the impact on you with I statements, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And then of course, timely, which means, not like something that happened 6 months ago. And the last ones are really about like it being conversational, because if the feedback is designed to like help the person become aware of something they might not have been aware of, or potentially to grow, or give them the opportunity to evaluate your feedback and see if they want to do anything with it, being available for a conversation with them. So that kind of collaborative thing is like wanting to like have a dialogue and hear back from them, not just like you blah blah blah, but this is how I experienced it, and hearing what they have to say, and trying to be like on the same team with it. Does anybody have any thoughts about any of that? And they're back. Okay. So confrontational language, that's like going to trigger up people's defensiveness. If you're like, sure, you're right, and you're just like, you, that makes it really hard to create that kind of learning environment. Hey, Vanessa and Shay, I see you're back. There was an
Yes.
invitation.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Our internet went down, so we had to try and get back in.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Well, glad you made it back. And there was some comments that, people would welcome like feedback from you all in the debrief too. If you have something to say, like I heard it said that, you give a lot of really positive feedback, which is nice and appreciated, but also like if there's, constructive things, you're invited to share that as well. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. We like to hear from them.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. The next one, this is a little more into that I statements thing. And hopefully there's been some training on this. It's sort of like this is like from nonviolent communication a little bit, but it's like that sort of like I feel when you, because of whatever it does, and so it's sort of like an example would be like, oh, like I feel betrayed because I shared a concern about something with you, and then I heard about it from someone else, and I had trusted you to hold that information to yourself. And so, that would be like I filled in the betrayed, when you did this thing, which is share something that I told you in confidence, because I trusted you. Those are like good kind of I statement things. And like, it kind of comes from needs. And I just have this slide here that has all these needs on it. And these are needs that we all have as people. And that's, you as panelists. And I was also thinking that, the participants also have all these needs. And like, I think sometimes in the neighborhood courts context, when you're giving feedback to each other, or thinking about what went wrong, you're actually sort of maybe somewhat speaking on behalf of the participant, so it might not be like, I felt because, this need of mine wasn't being met, but it might be like, I felt concerned that, some line of questioning, might have sort of, I don't know, like undermined, let me think of what I would say, like might have like made the participant feel a little defensive, which would be make it harder for them to kind of learn from this experience, something like that. Okay, it would not be a workshop on feedback if I didn't talk about calling out versus calling in. So, calling out is sort of, that can be like kind of putting people on blast for being something often something like sexist, racist, homophobic, that kind of a thing. And what it does is kind of like puts that person a little bit in an outcast type status because they've done some behaviors that, you know, probably do need to have their attention called to so they can become aware of them. And the sort of way to do that is a little bit more as like with the idea that the person can grow and change, not like you are a, you know, homophobic jerk, like you're a person who like might be oblivious to something because your life experience hasn't let you see things. So you're seeing only a limited view, and I can help share like a broader view with you. And so so that would be calling in. And again, it would be like that, like, hey, can I give you some feedback? Is there a time we can talk? And then being open to having that kind of dialogue. So that's more of the calling in type behavior. All right, I have another breakout for us, which I think would be good if we do in a breakout, because it's kind of meant to be like for two people and to work like a more intensively on a real life type situation.
You okay. Now I'm gonna be a little I mean it in a positive way.
Okay.
I wish we had stayed all of us had stayed in a group together
really?
so that we could get variations of other people's opinions and ideas. Because it was, for me, just Nancy and I, what would you say, Nancy?
Um, I don't know.
See, now you get shy. I think I would have gotten more information from other people. I'm senior, but some of the people seem to get what we're trying to accomplish better than I.
You mean in that breakout room?
Not in the baker. I think when Liz said, "Why don't we all stay together and do the
Uh-huh.
do the," I think that was better.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I thought that for this one, like if each person brings like kind of a scenario and then gets a chance to focus on it and talk it through, there wouldn't be time to do that for everybody in the group.
Oh,
We're all
okay.
together. But I
See,
don't know.
I didn't even understand. I don't think me and you speak for yourself, Nancy, but I don't think we understood the assignment.
Oh, okay. Well, that's on me. I'm sorry. I should have, made sure that you understood what I was suggesting that you all do.
For me, I just didn't have a scenario to share. So,
Well, hopefully that means you're, just like kind of a clear channel and like dealing with things as they come up. I always have a scenario because I'm married, but
She's married.
that was a joke. Yes. Okay. Well, if you two want to,
well, we did have a scenario that
Well,
was
I mean, we
neighborhood
did talk
court
through a scenario.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
you did?
We
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
And we're just, yeah, it
yeah.
would have been, I personally wanted to hear about other people's scenario and see how feedback was given to them.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what, and I think that's what I'm saying too, as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wasn't quite sure I understood the assignment.
Maybe one way I could have done that would be to ask a couple of people to sort of volunteer to have like their scenario workshopped by the
Right.
group, rather than
Actu-
expecting for like, oh, I gotta send them an, oh, no, that's not it. Rather than expecting everybody to have a scenario and thinking that that would be the way to go. Because I was thinking it would be a time for each person to kind of talk about something, but.
How
Yeah.
much time do we have left?
Oh,
for
we
this
have
break?
about 3 minutes.
Oh, 3?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I
I
think
was,
that second suggestion. Oh, I'm sorry, Nancy. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, go ahead. I'm done.
No. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
See, you're kind of shy, and I don't know if it's shy is the right word or
Oh, I welcome the
hesitant to.
feedback. I really do. So lay it on me, whatever anybody has to say it.
Well, I do think your second suggestion was great. If we had did if we all the whole all of the participants had seen a couple of role plays. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it would have required a couple people to be more vulnerable in the sense of,
Yeah.
like, let's say I bring a conflict and, just for example, since I made the joke about being married, let's say I have a conflict because I feel like I'm always, feedback. I feel like I'm always unloading the dishwasher, and I would like that to be like a little more shared. So that's the feedback, or the conversation that should happen. I would have to share that with like the whole group instead of just one other person. And so that makes it a little bit harder for the person who's sharing their story, but probably people would have done it. I mean, that's not a very vulnerable story, is it? I would have to come up with a more vulnerable kind of conflict.
Well, I'll tell you what we did discuss. Nancy said that one of the participants was communicating, but they weren't really asking a question. And doing debriefing, she didn't speak up and want to find out why they first of all didn't ask a question, and why did what the question that they did eventually ask, it didn't seem to be helpful in getting the participant to open up. Did I say that right, Nancy?
Almost. So what happened was, during one of our cases, one of the panelists started talking about baseball, and I wasn't sure where the panelist was going with that, but I didn't know how to ask constructively, or I don't even know what the right word
Like
is.
a metaphor or something.
And then what I said was, you could have said something affirming and then ask them why they did that.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
I call that like a feedback sandwich, like,
Yeah.
something positive and then something, I mean, asking them why they did it is good. But, and then something positive at the end. That's the feedback sandwich, that kind of idea.
Oh, is that what you call that?
Some people call it that. All right,
Okay.
hang on a second. I got to send a message out to
Oh.
everybody here.
Okay.
So Pat, I think we did do this exercise.
We did it right?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I mean, I actually meant for you to bring a scenario not from
Yeah,
neighborhood
from
groups,
outside.
Right.
Yeah.
but I don't think I guess I didn't explain that too well either. So
No, you
No.
did. I just didn't have one from outside, and we didn't know what to talk about. So because Pat has been a panelist longer than I have, I asked her for advice. And
I mean,
said,
that's
"Hey."
actually better, really,
Yeah.
because then you're like talking about like the situation that we're here to like, to work on with neighborhood court. So I'm actually, it seems good that you brought that up. But did you come up? Oh, whoops! I didn't send this. That's the problem with trying to do two things at once.
Well, what happened was I told her to say something, and I gave her how I would say it, and she was like, "Wow, I don't think I could have said it that way." But what I said was, because at first I thought they were asking a question about baseball, but all they were doing was talking about baseball. And what I ended up saying was that was a good way to reach the panelists by talking about baseball, but I didn't really understand why you even talked about baseball. What did you expect? Well, I didn't say that much, right? But what did you expect to glean? What did you expect to happen from that line, that manner of questioning?
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting. Like, did they think they were gonna, build more rapport or,
I think that was the intention, except, we do work, we have a time constraint. And sometimes I just don't know where the questioning's going or the sharing.
Yeah. And it's hard, like Blake was saying, when you don't have
Right.
necessarily see each other that often,
Right.
you don't have that relationship too. It makes it a little bit more
Yeah.
challenging.
Yes.
All right, everybody's back.
I have to
All
turn.
right, so how was that? Anybody?
It was good. It was good. Gabriella and we had a great discussions. So yeah.
And we didn't know each other, so it was really, really good, really nice.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a little team building, I guess, too. Did you talk about situations from your life outside of neighborhood courts?
We
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
We did.
Great.
Rachel, I have another Zoom at 7:00.
Oh, you do? Oh, and it is 7:00. Oh, you're gonna miss the part about receiving feedback. Well, the main tip I'll say before you go, Gabriella, is if somebody gives you some feedback, have an attitude of curiosity and ask questions. And thank you so much for coming for the time that you had available for this.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
Gabrielle.
Bye, Gabrielle.
Does anybody else want to share anything from the time in the breakout room? Was it helpful to go through that checklist and use it to consider a situation? It's okay if the answer is no.
I couldn't see the checklist once we were in the breakout room.
Oh, no, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Sorry.
Okay. It's an interesting conversation, though. But we talked about how you kind of have to pick your people that you're gonna, because it's vulnerable to give the feedback. You have to pick the people that you're willing to be vulnerable with.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I mean, that does go along with that sort of idea of feedback being, we think of it if it's, kind of negative as not as a gift, but it kind of does have that quality of the person is extending themselves and being vulnerable and taking a risk by sharing it. So interesting that came up. Okay. Well, moving forward, so I wanted to mention this, when you're in conversation, if there's someone who's, more marginalized, they often have the advantage of seeing things that people who are in more privileged position don't see and don't have the awareness of. So if you're, and there's all kinds of different privileges, and you may have it in some areas and not in other areas, but if someone's speaking to their experience and they're more marginalized in that area that you're talking about, and you feel oh, that doesn't jive or whatever, it's try to sit with it and hear what they have to say, because you might really learn something about something that you have a total blind spot about. Okay. All right, moving on, receiving feedback. Okay, why is receiving feedback so hard? And it really kind of comes down to that we all want to grow and learn, and it feels good to grow and learn. And we also want to be loved and accepted for who we are right now, and appreciated and valued. And so it's kind of a conflict. It's that internal, when the feedback comes, it's oh, why don't you love me just the way I am? And it's actually true that somebody can appreciate you and value and respect you and still have, some feedback to give you. And that, you know, that can be challenging. So I just wanted to mention that that can be part of why it's hard to get it, because it's going against that kind of need that we have. So a couple of the sort of common kind of triggers of receiving the feedback is just like that perception one. So that's what it's calling here the truth trigger. It's like, it's just, you're wrong, you know, it's just it's like, if you feel defensive, try to calm yourself a little bit and maybe ask, you know, a little bit more about it. But if the first reaction is that's not true, like, well, what are they seeing that you don't see? And, you know, you get to like, if you kind of elicit more and find out more about what they have to say, then you can make a choice in yourself about like, is that feedback like something that I want to like take in and use to sort of improve myself, or is that like something that like I don't really think, you know, carries any weight, and I'm not going to worry about it. And then the relationship trigger, the sort of like, who are you to tell me? I mean, that's like let's say you're in a debrief and it's a panel, and you know, somebody says something kind of critical about your line of questioning, and that person has only been on neighborhood courts for like 6 months. Like, what do they know? Like, who are they to like say that? That's another kind of trigger that we can get. And then the identity triggers, I mean, that one is like, if it's like, if I really see myself as an empathetic person and something I really value about myself, and then somebody is like, you know, you were really kind of, you know, hard on that guy and seemed sort of oblivious to how his emotional response to what you were saying. Oh, that could really hurt, because like, that's not how I see myself. So it's like, when you're getting that feedback, like trying to have that attitude of curiosity. So that relaxing, because it can be a little overwhelming. And so if you ask a question first, it kind of gives you a chance. I mean, you get more information, and you're also buying a little time, you know, while they're elaborating on whatever it is. So try not to be defensive and ask questions, and then you get the information, and you get to decide whether it's like useful feedback for you or not. Like, what somebody says isn't like the truth. That's just like their perception. So if you're unsure, let that first response be a question, whether it's, you know, tell me more, or it could be, you know, one of these things here, like, you know, what is the most important thing that you want me to hear, or something like that, you know, just to elicit more out of it. Do you all get what I'm saying about that? Okay.
Mhm.
The next thing is, this little drawing is sort of meant to be like, are you present in the situation? And that's for both like the giver of the feedback and the receiver of the feedback. So it's like, what's like the embodiment practice that works for you? Like, could be like just breathing, you know, taking a breath can be like conscious breath can be a very good way to like stay in the moment. Most people say it's harder to receive feedback than to give it, but for some people it's harder to give it than receive it. So, you know, for both people, it's like trying to like make sure you're ready. And that's why we did that exercise earlier about giving feedback, because that takes, you know, that can be really hard to do too. And obviously receiving it is challenging for reasons that, you know, I just mentioned. So like, if anger or intense emotions arise, you know, it's information. Like, feelings are a really important part of the human experience, and it gives us like information about what we need. So if you're giving the feedback and the other person gets upset, like trying to be empathetic with them, and, you know, maybe like, you don't have to like press the point if they can't hear it. And if you're feeling kind of like overwhelmed with what's going on, I mean, you get to set some limits about it too, because here, I want to show you this window of tolerance graphic. This is related to the growth mindset thing. Like, in that middle area, do you see where it says where growth happens? that's like, we're hearing the feedback and we're taking it in and we're like, yeah, that's something, that I can learn from. But if you get too far on either end of this, like in this drawing, it's showing these clouds on either side. And on the one side, the person's kind of like shutting down and like kind of checking out. And on the other side, it's like, maybe getting like super anxious and more intense and talking fast or crying or something like that. And either one of those, you're not really in like that learning zone. And it's good to like take a break. And it's okay to say with somebody, like, let's say someone gives feedback that's hard to hear, can say like, that's really hard to hear. And I just want to like take some time to kind of sit with that. And, can I come back to you and talk about it another time when I'm more ready? And then hopefully the person who gave the feedback is able to say like, yeah, I get it, and I really, want to talk to you about it, like when it's a good time. So it's okay to set boundaries. That's basically what I'm saying. Does anybody have any comments or about any of that? Nope. Okay. Okay. So I'm going back to the gift thing. Feedback is a gift. It is in this little graphic I found, I mean, it's just, if given with permission. So that's kind of like can I give you some feedback? Is now a good time? Those kinds of things. And the intent is for, to help the other person, not to like shame or scold them. So, and it's for the person, not about the person. So, and then targeted for success. I guess they needed a T, but the idea is like, so that they can grow. And that's basically kind of the end of what I have to say. I don't have a breakout room for like receiving feedback because that's a lot harder to do. But it is really challenging, but it's also like fantastic. I mean, I actually love to get feedback because it helps me to get better at things. And, if I don't agree with it, then I'm just like, okay, thanks for the feedback, but I don't have to take it to heart. And I have made a little feedback form and I will be giving the link for you all. And I, invite you to like, give me feedback about this because I'd like to learn. I did get some already after the last breakout room, which was great. And I appreciated that. So I'd just like to, I guess, just to close this out, invite you all to just share something that you're appreciative or grateful for, at neighborhood courts or, from this training today. And we could just all kind of popcorn that. And I'll start it off and I'll say, I'm actually quite grateful to Pat and Nancy for popping out of the breakout room and, letting me know about some aspects of that were a little challenging for them and I could have done better. So I appreciate that. And I'll pass it to Liz.
I'm grateful for you and for giving this feedback workshop. And I found the somatic stuff in this really good to think about and helpful. Like, and I would like a little bit more guidance on how to know when somebody else is shutting down. That would be interesting. My partner Blake was talking about how she can tell when other people are a good place to get feedback. I think that's really hard to do.
That's interesting. All right, you want to pass it to somebody else?
Oh, sure. Nancy?
I'm very grateful that Rachel was so understanding of us not fully understanding what the breakout assignment was. Thank you for that. But I guess, it's a good reminder that, there is a, a purpose for all this that we're all striving towards, and none of this should be taken personally, and I appreciate that. Do I get to call on someone?
Yeah.
Blake, sorry, you're on my screen.
Yeah, yes, it's a great opportunity to just reassess what feedback is. And also to not equate feedback with criticism, which I think is my automatic go-to, or had been before tonight. It's just feedback means criticism, and no, it doesn't necessarily. And so this made me appreciate just reevaluating the importance of it in life and in neighborhood court. Pat?
Well, I was great. I was glad to be a participant in this workshop because I always admire Blake and not Gabrielle, but the other lady that you know so well, Blake.
Susan Stone.
Yeah, because you guys seem to be very astute um, and perceptive, and I always enjoy when I have an opportunity to be in your presence. Overall, I enjoyed, and I actually um, feel like, as you did, Blake, because sometimes it's hard to see the difference when somebody is actually not being is not, they're not criticizing you, but actually trying to really give you feedback that could be helpful. Um, I guess Vanessa, right?
I'm appreciative of this workshop. It just opened up my eyes to different ways of giving constructive criticism, and to never take it personal, never taking it personal. And I feel since we're dealing with different personalities, it's just trying to maneuver our ways and trying to feel how we can go ahead and give that feedback that fits well with that person. Oh, and I guess Shay?
Oh, can't- so I'm appreciative and grateful for this workshop, just to hear everybody's perspective and how they feel about feedback and how open they are to feedback, and hearing that you guys want more feedback from us as case managers. And so hopefully we can take what we learned here today and start applying it in some of our hearings. I'm going to pass it to Valerie.
Yeah, I'm the last one anyway. So anyway, everything that I want to say, all of my colleague has been said already. I'm very appreciative and grateful for the workshop today. And every time I see you guys, I learn everything new every time. So thank you so much.